this challenge review, we're going to prevent the player from moving during the idle animation. Now, logically, what is the first thing we need to do? We're in our Moss Giant, and I need to know when this idle animation is playing. Well, in order to even get a handle onto this item, we need to know about its animator component. So the first thing I need to do is our Moss Giant here needs to get a reference to the animator controller. From there, I can then find out information about what's being played on that controller. So let's open up our script by double-clicking, and let's get a reference to our animator component. So I'm going to say private animator, and we're going to call it _anim. From here, in void start, we need to say anim equals get component, and the component we want is going to be the animator, but it's in our children. So we need to say get component in children, and we want the animator component. Now that we have the animator component, we can then find out information about what animation is currently playing. And if the current animation is the idle animation, then we can simply say, hey, do nothing. Now the question is, how do I know what animation is currently playing? Well, if we go to Google, let's go to Google, and let's type in, basically we want to know what animation is playing during the animation system. So here we want to say what animation is playing, and we can say animation system in Unity. And here we can see the manual scripting API for animation. And this is the old legacy system. So really what we're looking for is more so Mechanim, which is now called the animation system. So let's go ahead and say how to check which animation is playing Unity, we'll say 2018. So here animation is playing that. Once again, anytime you see animation here, this is using the legacy system. Our new system is animator. So here we can say, and let's just go to the animator Unity scripting API. There we go, scripting API for animator. And in here, we're looking for how to check which animation is playing. So these are variables that are attached to it. Those aren't really going to help us. We want to use a method. I know that there's going to be a method we call, and it's going to return to us some information about what's currently playing. So check this out. There's something here called returns an animator state info with the information on the current state. Let's go in here. This is going to say animator state info and animator with the information on the current state returns an animator state info with the information on the current state. So what is an animator state info? Well, what we have here is animator state info, information about the current or next state. So when an animation is playing, it's in a current state. And you can see here, we can actually compare. Does the name match the name of the active state? That active state is basically your animation. And there's some other properties in here. So let's go ahead and actually see if we can find a reference online for how this is used. So here we want to say, check if animation is playing animator. And here we go. How can I check if an animation is playing or has finished? If we go into this first answer here, you'll see here that whatever the problem is using the animator component, but more specifically, I want to jump right down to the answer. If you use the animator in Mechanim, then I think you should do something like this. And you can see here that if the animator component, which is our reference, and they're saying get current animator state info, parentheses 0, dot is name. So that's exactly what we were looking at. And here's an example of how to use it. We put it in an if statement, and it's going to return true or false if the animation name matches what's currently playing. So here what we can do is let's hop back into Unity. And we are going to be using the current animation state info. So here inside of our code, we want to say if idle animation, then do nothing. So here, if, and here we're going to say _anim dot get current animation state info. Now, if I open a parenthesis, it's going to say layer index returns an animator state info with the information on the current state. Now, what is the layer index? The layer index is this in Unity right here. Unity allows us to actually create layers to organize our animations. Now we're not using any layers here, so our layer is going to be 0. But if we had additional layers other than the base layer, we would use whichever layer this is organized in. So heading back over to our script, we can assume that we have no layers, so we're going to be on layer 0. Once we've done that, we can say isName and open up a parenthesis. And it says, does name match the name of the active state? So what are we checking for? Well, the animation there is called idle. So here we're going to say isName idle. And if that's the case, then what do we want to do? If anim.getCurrentState isName idle, then we need to say do nothing. So we're going to say return. Let's remove our pseudocode. Let's save this. Head back into Unity. And let's see if it works. And as you can see here in the scene view, our character is still. And then he goes to move on. So it looks like our code is working. So let's check that again. He's idle. Once he stops, he begins moving. Exactly the behavior we want. I'll see you guys in the next video.